Hello there, lovely folks at YouTube. Ren here. So I have a plant, this one here, not this one, but this one. This plant is very traditionally associated with the summer solstice. I am filming this video on the summer solstice because as soon as I'm done, I plan on harvesting that plant, as is traditional. You won't see this video until later, but just so you know, this is when I'm filming. This plant right here is Verbena officinalis, which is also, the common name is Vervain. There are several plants in the Verbena genus. Let me start by saying that Verbena, that name, actually just means sacred plant. So some of the common names for this plant are Herba Sacra or the herb of grace. In Roman times, Verbena indicated a plant that was used to sweep the altar clean, particularly the altars of Jove or Jupiter. So there are numerous species in that Verbena genus. I actually have two. So I have this one, and then I also have a Verbena bonariensis, which is the Buenos Aires Verbena. Verbena hastata, or blue vervain, is one that you also commonly see used in magical circles. That is the genus that is native to the United States. This one is native to Europe, but they are both fairly interchangeable. Verbena officinalis is what I have, so that's what I'm going to talk about. This plant is very easy to grow, zones 4 to 8, likes sun but will grow in some part shade. It's not terribly fussy about the soil condition, grows to about 2 to 2.5 feet high, so you can see this is about as tall as it gets right here. It is very easy to grow from seed, and it readily self-seeds everywhere. This plant, I did not plant this one. These right here, this is where they're supposed to be. This one is not supposed to be here. I let them go because, of course, it's good for harvesting. These are going to be pulled up. These are going to be left for next year's plants. It is a perennial, so it will come back year after year. However, I have found that the growth seems to be best in the first year plants. So like these plants that were here last year are looking a little more spindly, whereas this one came in this year is like huge and lush. So although you can grow them from year to year, sometimes you benefit from just letting them go for 1 year because they seem to be bigger and better. Now, as you can see, the flowers on this are very, very subtle, very tiny flowers. These little flowers right here, that's it. Little teeny tiny flowers. Doesn't really have any fragrance to it either. So its decorative value is, well, let's just say it's not really grown for its decorative value. We'll leave it at that. The blue vervain, the flowers are a little bit larger and a little more colorful, which is why you do sometimes see it grown in the garden trade for decorative uses, but this one really is not. Only reason most people would have this in their garden is purely for magical uses. This plant has such a long, long history of use in magic. One of the names of this plant is sorcerer's herb or enchanter's herb. It does fall under the dominion of Venus. Elements of earth and air usually is what's attributed to it. Obviously, number one, biggest use for this is purification. It was used for cleansing the altar, making a place sacred, and that's one of the good uses for this plant. Helps to chase away those evil or malevolent spirits, and just help with designated a space as sacred. So many uses to this plant. I'm going to try to list as many as I can think of off the top of my head, but I'm probably going to miss some, just so you know. Strength. Strength is a big thing that this plant does. This is one of the plants that's sometimes known as ironweed, because it was used in the forging of steel. Basically, they would put it into the quench. So, of course, when you make iron or steel, you know, after you heat it, you have to quench it in order to harden it and cool it. But this plant was put into the quench in order to sort of imbue it magically and give it greater power. So that also means that you can use this plant in order to consecrate any of your magical tools, particularly tools that are made of iron or metal. This plant does have an affinity for iron. One of the ancient techniques for harvesting this plant was actually to inscribe a circle around the plant using an iron knife. So definitely iron has an affinity for this plant as well, which is interesting for an herb of Venus. But, you know, Venus and Mars have a very interesting relationship with each other, so that always shows even in the plant world. Mental clarity is another use that this plant can be put to. There was one of the old magical writers, like we're talking like 15th century, named Albertus Magnus, and he was quoted as saying, "Infants bearing it shall be apt to learn, and loving learning, and they shall be glad and joyous." So, if you have a child, this would be good to include in a child's blessing in order to sort of give them that love of learning and mental clarity and joy in their life. Or it can just be used for your own use. You know, if you are doing sort of a dedication ceremony for yourself, vervain could be used in that as well. I know we've already talked about some of its protective abilities, how it cleanses away those negative, bad influences. That also means it can be protective against negative emotions, both within and without. Very, very common iconography in protective charms. In fact, this little teeny tiny vervain flower is very commonly incorporated into the cimaruta, which is the Italian folk charm. I've talked a little bit about that in my rue video as well, but yeah, rue and vervain have that relationship where they're like the two big plants in Italian folk magic. So this is the other one. So yeah, I mean, because of that protective aspect, it can be used to bless the home. It can be used for breaking curses or hexes. Some people use it in love spells. It is an herb of Venus, of course, but I think it's more for empowering the working rather than actually bringing an aspect of love to it. Frequently used by singers and poets would wear it in order to enhance their skill in linguistics. I probably need that not right now. I'm a little tongue-tied, I apologize. It's hot, and whenever I sweat, brain function suffers for me. So, prosperity. Prosperity magic is another thing you can use. Anyone who's ever grown vervain and had it seed everywhere can basically see why it would be used for prosperity. But it's also a Venus plant, and Venus is also good for that prosperity, fertility aspect. So, I mean, basically, if there's anything you can think of that you want to do magically, this plant can probably help and empower that working in some way, shape, or form. So, like I said, this plant is traditionally harvested on midsummer, which is what I'm going to do. I have my little hori-hori, which is an iron knife that I'm going to use to dig it out. So, we're going to do this the old-fashioned way. And, of course, by harvesting it on midsummer, when the sun is at the peak, you're sort of carrying that peak of success throughout the year embodied in this plant. So that's what my plan is. So, interesting little plant. I hope you have a chance to find it. It's not easy to find. I did have to grow mine from seed initially. There are some places you can find seeds. I know I've given some resources before, such as, I think I got these from J.L. Hudson, but it is very easy to grow, and basically once you have it, as long as it likes the place it's in, it will be there forever. So enjoy this plant. Give it a try. I recommend it. So I hope this video finds you well, and I will see you again soon.